You ready? Good morning, everybody. I'd like to go ahead and call to order this February 12th, 2025 meeting of the Monterey County Planning Commission and ask Commissioner Getzelman to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. Thank you. That's what happens when you're absent.
Exactly what happens.
Timing couldn't have been any worse.
Very well. Madam Clerk, would you call a roll, please?
Of course. Good morning. Commissioner Shaw? Here. Commissioner Getzelman?
Here.
Commissioner Work?
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Here.
Commissioner Mendoza?
Here.
Commissioner Dale?
Here.
Commissioner Monsalve?
Here.
Commissioner Hartzell?
Here.
Commissioner Gomez?
Here.
Commissioner Amy?
Here.
Roberts. Good morning, Chair. You have a quorum.
Good morning. Thank you. I'd like to go ahead and ask the Acting Secretary of the Planning Commission to make sure everybody knows how to participate on Zoom, should you need to do so. Ms. Jensen.
To participate during the public comment on the Zoom platform, you can raise your hand by opening the Reactions tab at the bottom of your screen and clicking on the Raise Hand icon. On a mobile or a landline, you can raise and lower your hand by pressing *9. Another way you can participate is by sending an email to pchearingcomments@countyofmonterey.gov. This email address can also be found on today's agenda. Staff are monitoring this email in real time, so if you have a question, comment, or document, staff will do our best to respond in real time during the meeting, though this does not guarantee it will be done once the meeting has begun. Members of the public who wish to comment will be granted permission by the meeting clerk to unmute themselves during the public comment section of each agenda item once the chairperson acknowledges them to speak. We do ask that you keep yourselves muted unless you are presenting. To mute yourself on the Zoom platform, there is a mute button at the bottom of the screen that looks like a microphone. To mute or unmute yourself on a mobile or a landline, press *6.
Thank you. Well done. Madam Clerk, would you talk a little bit about the translation?
Of course. So our Planning Commission is using a pilot program for Wordly for interpretation services. To utilize Wordly during today's meeting, scan the provided QR code or access the meeting via the link on the screen. Once you are logged in, select your preferred language and click on Attend to join. If you are in the chambers, please use headphones or see the clerk for a listening device. If you have any additional questions regarding Wordly, please email pchearingcomments@countyofmonterey.gov for additional support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, this is the time set aside on the agenda for members of the public to comment on any item they'd like to talk about that is not on today's agenda and which is under the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. Is there anybody here who would like to make such a comment? I don't see anyone in the chambers. Madam Clerk?
There are no hands up on Zoom and no additional emails.
All right, give it half a second here. I don't see anybody weighing in. That being the case, I'm going ahead and close this section and come back to the clerk for any agenda additions, deletions, and/or corrections.
For the record, we received a letter from the public for agenda item number 1, which is PLN 230131, which was distributed by email and available in the chambers for the public and for the commission.
Thank you. All right. This is a time for commissioner comments, requests, and referrals. Commissioners, is there anything you would like to bring forward today? Commissioner Mendoza, is that you leaning forward?
It is. Probably been about 6-7 months ago, I brought up to the attention of the county that there's a trailer like a hauler parked on Salinas Road. And it's been there for months and months and months, and it has not been removed. There used to be a boat there. Now there's a trailer there, and the trailer, it's almost kind of like a hazard, for the vehicles that are constantly going by there, what have you. I don't think public parkway or public roads should be a place where we allow trailers, permanently there, and that seems to be the case. So I would appreciate if somebody would look into that to find out what can be done and get it removed, Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure that someone here will take a note and pass it along. Anything else? Commissioner Roberts?
I forgot, I did have something, and it's related to our joint LUAC committee meeting 2 weeks ago. And I'm wondering if staff can bring us an updated list of our LUAC members and who the Planning Commission liaisons are, so that we can, so we all know where we should be.
Thank you. And I think we need to update that list. So if we could agendize that for a future meeting, that would probably be a really good idea as well. Anything else? Seeing nothing, I'm going to go ahead and move along to our scheduled matters with agenda item number 1, which is PLN 230131, the Peliova matter. And Mr. Alameda, are you going to lead us through this? Take it away.
Can we please share staff left? Thank you. Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. Chair Deal, Joseph Alameda, presenting HCD file number PLN 230131, Peliova. The project is located at 103A San Venancio Road in Salinas within the Toro area plan. The subject property is zoned low-density residential with building site 6 and design control overlays. The project involves the construction of a 2-story, 3,633 square foot single-family dwelling with an attached 742 square foot garage, an attached 618 square foot deck, and associated site improvements. Additionally, the project involves the removal of 10 protected oak trees and development on slopes in excess of 25%. The project involves an application for a use permit to allow development on slopes in excess of 25%, as required by Title 21 and General Plan Policy OS 3.5. The subject property is almost entirely sloped in excess of 25%, as shown on county GIS records and the attached slope map. There are limited areas within the subject property that do not contain slopes in excess of 25%, the majority of which are located on the southern and ridgeline portions of the property, which are placed in a scenic easement that prohibits structural development. The only developable area of the property is directly adjacent to San Venancio Canyon Road, where the project is proposed. The proposed location of the residence and driveway avoids ridgeline development by siting the residence near San Venancio Canyon Road, reduces tree removal by utilizing an open area within the surrounding forest, and minimizes the amount of hillside alteration by proposing a 2-story structure and aligning the driveway with the contours of the topography, therefore better meeting the goals and policies of Monterey County Code. Oak trees over 6 inches in diameter are protected within the Toro area plan, and pursuant to Title 21, a use permit is required for the removal of more than 3 protected trees. As proposed, the project involves the removal of 10 protected oak trees, including 2 landmark trees, which are those native trees over 24 inches in diameter. The 2 24-inch landmark oaks proposed for removal, identified in the arborist report as trees 77 and 78, and indicated on screen by the red stars, are within or directly adjacent to the proposed attached deck, and are both identified in the arborist report as being in poor conditions with present decay and structural defects. The other 8 oaks proposed for removal, indicated by the yellow and orange circles on screen, are identified in the arborist report as being in poor to fair conditions and are directly within the proposed development footprint, or will be impacted by the cut and fill associated with the driveway development. As cited in design, the proposed development, indicated by the red rectangle on screen, occurs on the least forested portion of the property's developable area and utilizes a 2-story design to minimize the footprint and avoid impacting more protected trees. 12 other protected trees on the subject property will be retained, shown on the screen in green, including several dual and multi-stem oak trees, which are indicated by the green circles on screen. Title 21 requires the replacement or relocation of each removed protected tree on a 1-to-1 ratio. And although only 10 trees are required for replanting, the project plans indicate the applicant proposes the replanting of 11. The project went before the Toro Land Use Advisory Committee on October 28, 2024, who recommended approval of the project by a vote of 4-0, but expressed concerns relative to colors and materials, the health of replanted trees, and the requirement for a use permit to allow development on slopes in excess of 25%. The proposed development will have colors and materials consisting of a matte black metal roof, white board and batten wooden siding, and black trim. Several single-family dwellings within the greater surrounding areas and along San Venancio Road also include similar colors as the proposed residence. Therefore, the proposed project's colors will not detract from the immediately surrounding neighborhood character. As shown on the Toro Scenic Highway Corridors and Visual Sensitivity Map, the subject property is identified as visually sensitive. Per staff site visit on October 28th, the subject building site and proposed development, as delineated by staking and flagging, was not visible from San Venancio Road or Highway 68 due to topography, distance, and existing mature vegetation.
Pause just a second while
Yeah.
we figure out what's going on with the, there we go. Maybe it'll stay on this time.
Okay. Staff received public comment end of day yesterday regarding several concerns. Regarding concerns raised about erosion and unstable hillsides, water runoff, dust, and pollution, the applicant has submitted a geotechnical report and a geological report that concluded there are no unsuitable soils within the project area. Further, and consistent with Title 16 requirements, the applicant has prepared a draft construction management plan, stormwater pollution prevention plan, grading plans, and erosion and drainage plans. These draft plans have been reviewed by HCD Environmental Services, who raised no concerns about the project prior to issuance of the required construction permit. These erosion control, stormwater pollution prevention, and grading plans will be finalized. Title 16 also requires that all construction activities be conducted in a manner that controls dust. The subject property is served potable water by Cal-Am, and traffic impact fees will be addressed through implementation of standard conditions of approval that require payment of traffic impact fees. Finally, Monterey County Code does not regulate private views, and there is no evidence that indicates this property provides wildlife habitat. Therefore, staff recommends the Planning Commission find the project qualifies as a Class 3 categorical exemption pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15303 and approve a combined development permit consisting of a design approval to allow the construction of a 3,633 square foot single-family dwelling with an attached garage and deck, a use permit to allow the removal of 10 protected trees, and a use permit to allow development on slopes in excess of 25%. That concludes staff's presentation, and staff is available for questions.
Thank you. Well done. I do have one starting question, which is, do we have a quantity for development on slope of greater than 25%? This application, I didn't find that in there.
Yes, I don't believe that an actual quantity was provided. However, the vast majority of the site is on slopes. There's only a small portion indicated by GIS that is not on development, that is not on slopes over 25%.
What is the footprint then? I mean, that's what we're trying. I'm trying to get an actual sense of the number because we have often scrutinized this exceedingly closely. We want to make sure we are approving something that we know what exactly it is.
Right. So it's approximately 10,000 to 11,000 square feet of development on slopes. In regards to grading, 367 cubic yards of cut and 33 cubic yards of fill.
And I could have missed it, but is there a construction management plan for the cut?
A construction management plan was not provided. However, we could condition one.
That's a lot of loads of dirt going off-site. Okay. Any other technical questions for staff? Commissioner Roberts?
I have a sort of similar question. In reading the findings and evidence for the development on slope, we didn't talk about that it's the smallest amount possible, and I didn't know if we were required to find that finding.
Yes, give me 1 second.
You know, it's like the least, you know, there's some language about.
Yeah, so through the chair. So the findings are that there's no feasible alternative to development on slopes in excess of 25%, and that it would better meet the goals and policies of Monterey County Code. With the constraints of the lot, they are using the one area of the developable area that has slopes on less than 25%, even though that is a very small portion of the land. And so staff found no feasible alternative. As well, as mentioned in the presentation, they avoid ridgeline development, they avoid being within the scenic areas, and they avoid development on the scenic easement. So it does better meet the goals and policies.
To follow up, the only reason I'm thinking about it is it's very well documented what you just stated, and I appreciate that. In other examples of ridgeline development, we've worked really hard to make sure there aren't decks or just like kind of unnecessary or things that could be reduced if someone tried. So that's, I guess, what I was looking for.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on that and just say it's not binary. We've got great findings to say that we need to do it, but we don't have great findings to say that it couldn't be less. And so that, as Commissioner Roberts says, we've gone really into detail to try to make sure that there's no, what we would probably call options that would reasonably reduce the amount of development on slope. Without a quantity, it's really hard for me to make that assessment. So even looking at the plan, and I appreciate if we can just make a general note that going forward, I'd like to see both quantities for that and grading readily available in the staff report so that we can follow up on that. Any further technical questions for staff? Commissioner Mendoza?
Yeah, just briefly on the overall height, because we're doing some cut and fill, is the height of natural grade, or is it after, obviously they're going to do a cut and fill, how did they determine the height, or how was that determined?
The height is of average natural grade.
Average after the fill?
No, average natural grade, so prior to the.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Shaw?
Thank you. I was wondering, so you showed pictures of neighboring houses as far as like design goes, but I'm wondering, are there any other houses in the immediate vicinity that are on a similarly sloped lot? Because when I looked at it, it didn't seem like there were anything even close to how sloped that lot is. It has like a little cliff face and then it goes straight up.
Yes, give me 1 second. So there are two neighboring lots that I don't know exactly if they have the exact same slopes, but they do have similar slope constraints that are developed. However, this lot is unique in that area for the extent of the slopes. But the neighboring lot does have slopes as well and is developed.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, do you know what the slope is on that lot or what range we're working in? It just said that I think that it was greater than 30, but how much greater than?
On the neighboring lot?
No, on this lot.
Give me 1 second. I'm just going to pull up the plans and see if that indicates what the slope actually is. So the area of the proposed development is on a 50% gradient slope, and that's from the soils report.
Through the chair, thank you. And then one more question. Are the only pictures of the flagging and staking that we have or that you have available, is it only in the arborist report?
Yes, those were the photos of the staking and flagging.
Do we have anything from like the street level, from on the property ground level? Is there anything that is not from like above mostly?
I believe there was a photo in there from San Venancio Canyon Road, but the rest of the photo, if not, then those are the photos that we have of the staking and flagging.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Commissioner Monsalve.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just would like to confirm my understanding that this lot is majority slope and the proposed development already takes advantage of whatever portion of the lot is less than 25% sloping. And it is also cited where it will require the least number of tree removal.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I'm still struggling with the quantity issue because what we have here is a very challenging lot. And while we do understand everyone has the right to build something on their lot, the size of that something is up for discussion. So when we don't have any way to compare the size of the home, I certainly assume it's similar to the neighbors, but we don't actually have that in front of us. And we don't have the quantities to compare it with. It's difficult for me to believe we have minimized development on slope. Yes, I know we have to have some in a lot of this nature, but whether it's minimal or not. So if while people are talking, you can find some way for us to wrap our heads around whether, I mean, there's a lot of difference in how much you have to change the slope of a lot for a 2,000 square foot home, for a 3,000 square foot home, for a 4,000 square foot home. And we don't really have, didn't come away from the report with an understanding that this was as economical as we could be with this very important request for a variance, which it kind of is. It's like special circumstances of the lot, I understand, but that isn't, as I said before, it's not binary. It's like, how do I determine not only whether it's necessary, but whether it's the least we can disturb the protected resources. So that's what's on my mind right now. So maybe while we proceed, you could think about how we might present that. And I would like to see findings about that as well, because we have in other cases said it's a really challenging lot, probably would have been developed if it were easy. We don't think that this much disturbance is as supportable, but we do think that something more modest might be. And I don't know if this is that case or not from what I read. So if you think about that, that'd be great. Anybody else? Nope. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing and ask the applicant or the applicant's representative if they'd like to come forward and say anything or make a presentation or... Welcome. Come on down. Maybe the clerk can give you a hand to get prepared with whatever you need.
USB or hook up the computer? All right. I mean, it'd be better for me to have the computer so I can just click through myself. Speak right here. Okay, thank you. I'm just going to start here with this real quick. My name is Jack Camp. I'm a professional engineer. Oh, sorry. My name is Jack Camp. Oh, I'm a professional engineer. I'm doing the civil design, the grading plan, drainage plan, the building design, the floor plans, elevations, and the structural design. So yeah, before I get into the little slideshow, I just wanted to address the question about how much area is being developed that's in the less than 25% range. So if you look at the screen, you'll see this kind of light green shaded area. That's all of the area of the property that was surveyed that's over the 25% slope. This area that is unshaded, where you can see the black behind it, that is area that is less than 25%. And so you can sort of see the driveways meandering up, and it kind of bisects that area that is in the less than 25% that has the black behind it. That area that's within our overall about 12,000 square foot of disturbed area, on this project, that black area that's within that 12,300 is about 1,800 square feet. So plus or minus 10% of the disturbed area is less than 25%.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Looking at that picture again, it was useful? Sorry, now that you pulled it off.
Sure.
I couldn't tell what the driveway was and what the less than 25% slope was. Is the driveway in that less than 25% slope?
The driveway meanders up from the entrance to the property, and it kind of comes into that less than 25% area. Like Joseph had stated, you drive into the area of the property that's sort of like a bowl shape where it comes to a lower slope in that bowl. So the house was placed in that area, which was the best area to build. Because there's really, I mean, it is a difficult lot.
To follow up on that, when you get to pictures again of the layout, will you point the slope areas out with the design?
Yeah.
Thank you.
How I get this to be a big screen? So here's the picture of the site without any building on it. And this bold dashed line that's labeled area of disturbance is that 12,000 square feet that's being developed. And within that area, you see that unshaded spot that's the 1,800 square feet. And also to add, there was a package of staking photos that are not the photos that were in the arborist report that was submitted, so the county has that document. But here are those photos that are in the arborist report. And then here are some photos that are from the property. From ground level. This is at the top of the ridge, looking down. This is sort of on the side, looking at the ridge of the home. So here's, and the unshaded area that's less than 25% sort of got obstructed by the shading on the driveway on this one. So you don't quite see the full 1,800 square feet, but you can sort of see in the middle of the house, that unshaded area just sort of comes out into the end of the driveway. Here's the cross section of the building going up the hill. And we do have a little deck off the front. This house, this property in general, is a difficult property, as we've already went over. It doesn't have a lot of area to have outside living. And so the deck is providing basically the usable yard for someone to come outside and not be in the driveway. Here's the grading plan of the driveway. You can see the slope of the driveway is, I think, between 7 and 10% to get up to this area that has that spot, which is less than 25% slope. Here's the elevation from this is from the San Venancio Canyon Road side. The house is somewhat stepped back from the very steep hillside that borders San Venancio Canyon Road. I don't know off the top of my head how much of a steep face it is, but I believe it's around 15 feet from the road to the crest of the cut on that road. And the home is stepped back, I believe, around 50 to 70 feet. And so there's a concern made by the public, the written little letter that has concerns about this property being up higher and maybe being able to look down into the properties below. And from that deck, my judgment is you aren't going to be able to see over the crest to the property below. It's completely obstructed. And I could go back maybe to the CAD drawing. You know, for me, in my design sense, I believe we met all the requirements of the zone, of the area. The house next door is, it's got a very steep driveway, probably, I want to say, over 15% to get up to its buildable area. So as far as sort of the finished floor elevation, I would say that the neighboring house, looking at this view to the right, is placed even higher than this house is proposed to be constructed. We built it into the hillside, so the lower floor actually has a 10-foot retaining wall on the uphill side. So about, I'd say, half of the lower floor is actually stepped into the hill, and the front half, which is there's a little pop out in the little deck, that part is kind of at grade, and then the deck extends out and is about, I'm gonna say, somewhere around 10 feet from the walking surface of the deck at the edge down to the slope below. And then happy to answer any questions.
Sure. Let's start with Commissioner Gomez.
I was looking at the notes from the LUAC meeting. There they indicated and they suggested that earth tones be used. I can see why, considering the extent of the slope that is being built on. Mm-hmm. So is that being considered as part of this process?
Yeah. We were gonna, in the images here, we had proposed a more of a white, bright white for the field painting. That's gonna shift to a more like beige earth tone white, off-white, not this bright Arctic white.
Is that recorded anywhere?
Yeah, I'd like to add that as a condition if we go that direction, that it be compliant with earth tones in terms of the building. That way it obstructs less in that area, considering the amount of slope that is being built on.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other people wanting to? Commissioner Roberts?
Do you happen to have the numbers on the square footage of the driveway versus the building versus the, whatever, the patio, if there's one, or whatever, in terms of when we're making findings about slope?
So I got the driveway is 4,000 square feet. So I can break this down, and I don't know if you guys can read that up there, but so as far as the development of the home itself, so the structure's perimeter, the deck, the roof overhangs greater than 30 inches, and the rear patio, it's built into the hillside, like I mentioned. On the upper level, you actually walk out at grade onto a little rear patio. So that's a little area. So the rear patio, roof overhangs greater than 30, proposed deck, and the perimeter of the structure is about 4,200 square feet. So a little bit over 8,000. And I guess the house and the garage itself is both levels, the gross floor area for the home, 2 levels, and the garage, 4,400 square feet. And so of the entire raw land of the property, which is 286,000 square feet, we're proposing to develop 8,200 square feet, which is around 3%.
Anybody else? I just want to see, do we have a tree plan that we could put up, talk about a little bit?
Yeah, we've got a landscape plan.
I'll tell you where I'm going with this. My concern here is the impacts of the required fire clearance for buildings on slope are pretty severe. We have to look at 100 feet up the hill behind, as well as the other requirements. I noted in the staff report and in the conditions, I believe, there's a discussion of the fire department having had some concerns and that they were addressed. And I'm interested in knowing what they were, how they were addressed, and what the fire clearance is going to do to the overall impact of this on everybody else. Because we depend a lot on vegetation, and that our ability to do so is now changing.
You know, a couple of the trees are being cleared because they are too close to the house. There is a tree in front of the deck. I can't pull from my head what exactly that clearance is between the structures and the trees that you're referring to.
I'm just interested in what the fire department requires and what that's going to do to the appearance. So, in other words, if we've had situations in the past where we evaluated the impact of a property and then discovered that the fire clearance removed all of the buffering that we were kind of counting upon. And fire clearance is pretty aggressive in areas like this, and buildings on slopes are particularly vulnerable. So they do two things. The fire clearance goes up the hill behind, which has to do with erosion and erosion control and drainage, and it also has to do with the appearance. And so that's what I'm trying to wrap my head around, is if you have some information that would address, and I thought maybe the tree plan, tree removal information might help with that, but definitely interested in that going forward. So if anybody can pull that up, that would be great. And we'll come back and I'll ask what the fire department did ask about this property, what concerns they had, and what changes were made as a result of their expressed concerns. Because our findings and evidence under health and safety say they had some. And then my final question is, looking at all the slope maps, it appears that the driveway is right above the flat area, and I'm confused by that. Maybe I'm just reading it wrong. That there is a less sloped area immediately below the proposed driveway. So what's up with that?
So it seems like I'm stuck on this slide here. There we go. So let me, maybe I can get in. Apologies, I'm not a wizard with. All right, well, I think this slide sort of illustrates there's like almost like a ranch road that was graded into the property at some point. It seems like the previous owner or the previous owner to the previous owner had started the process to create a design to develop the property, and they had graded in this flat area that you're referring to. I don't believe that they graded it in with knowledge about where the property line was. And if you see, it's difficult to see on the slide there, but there's a vertical property line to the right of the north arrow that's going directly up the sheet. And right near where the driveway is, there's a diagonal line that dives off to the right, basically due north. That is a small triangular area of the neighboring property that is the driveway easement. And that is the designed, planned location for where this property was going to have its driveway access. When whomever decided to grade in that ranch road, where you see it's hatched and it doesn't have it's hatched with a cross hatch, not a shaded hatch like the rest of the over 25% area. Well, anyway, that cross hatched ranch road comes up and it does a tight U-turn, and it actually drives through the right-of-way and comes into the property at the side of the property, not really the street edge of the property, and then it meanders back and forth from inside the property to outside the property. So it's in some areas on, almost completely on the property, and then in other areas it is both in the right-of-way and on the property. So my guess is they just graded that in at the easiest location, not really understanding where the property line was, and it just with the driveway easement and the existing driveway that accesses the neighbor's house, in my judgment, it was a better location to actually start entering the property in that driveway easement.
Thank you. Any other questions?
This one also shows, this plan right here, sorry to interject, the location of all the trees that are being replanted. Those circles with the little dot inside are the replanting locations.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Anybody else? All right. Thank you. You'll have an opportunity to respond to anything that may be brought up in public comment, should you care to do so.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the public who would like to comment on this matter? I don't see anybody in the chambers, Madam Clerk.
I do not see any hands up on Zoom, and we do not have new emails.
Very well, that being the case, although the screen is dark, there it is. Last check. Having seen no further comment, I don't think there's anything to respond to, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to staff. Mr. Almeida, do you have anything to add?
I just wanted to clarify that staff received no comments from fire on this project, and they provided no conditions for the project. And I'm available for any questions you all may have.
Maybe I read it wrong, but under health and safety in the findings and evidence, I thought that it had referenced that they had.
We have some standard language in that section that lists the departments that reviewed the project and then says that they provided comments and conditions as appropriate. That's just an indicator that if they felt one was appropriate, a comment or a condition, that one would be applied. And in this case, fire did not provide any.
Okay. Anything else? Commissioner Work?
Yeah, was the lighting issue resolved? I know they had some concerns with the lighting.
Yes, downlit unobtrusive lighting has been conditioned.
So back to the trees and landscaping. Mr. Alameda, is that the only landscaping plan we have? Do we have any kind of understanding of what's happening with all of the things that are not trees? I mean, there's other plants in the world besides trees.
Right, let me pull up the plan. I believe that it's just all staff has is the trees being disturbed, but let me pull up the plan that was provided. So that does appear to be the only landscaping plan showing the trees. However, county records indicated no other protected species on site other than the trees themselves.
Thank you, but again, it's all interrelated. It's like punching jello, you know, the erosion's related to the vegetation, is related to the fire, is related to the trees. I mean, it's not, I really have to encourage us to think in a more holistic manner about site disturbance here. I had something else. Well, I'm not going to get into the trees. I mean, all these trees apparently have a bad case of being in the way, which makes them unhealthy. Did you come up with any further explanation that this is, in fact, the least possible disturbing way to develop this site with respect to slope?
So, yes, to reiterate, they're using the portion of the site that does not have slopes over 25%. They have a modest first floor plan. The first floor is of modest size, approximately 2,000 square feet. Instead of expanding that, they did a 2-story development, which further minimizes impacts to slopes.
And surrounding homes are similar sized?
Yes. Okay,
and with respect to the cut and fill construction management plan, would, in my view, be entirely necessary to make sure we don't overload San Venancio Canyon with numerous loads of dirt going somewhere, and then to understand about the impact of that on other roadways in the area, some of which are, like Highway 68, already heavily impacted. We'd like to stay out of the commute times for that. So a little more, I would like to have a little more clarity around that. Commissioner Shaw?
Thank you. So seeing as the lighting has been an issue and down lighting has been conditioned, I didn't see anything about having, and I've seen it in other projects where they've had non-reflective coatings on the windows. And I don't see that in here, and I'm not sure if that's something that would be appropriate in this location. But considering the lighting is an issue, that would strike me as potentially an issue as well.
Give me 1 second, sorry. So yes, it does not seem to be included with this project. If that's something the Planning Commission wants, we can add that as a non-standard condition.
And following up on Commissioner Gomez's point about colors, where do we stand with that right now, and what would we do going forward? What might be a solution to his concerns?
So staff felt that the originally proposed colors and materials were supportable. However, it was brought up at the LUAC for a more rustic color. Staff was not aware that the applicant had chosen to adjust the colors. However, we can condition that the colors be adjusted, and that can be finalized.
Yeah, in that particular case, I would like to see some outcome, because just saying they're going to be adjusted is insufficient for my peace of mind.
We can add that as a condition.
Commissioner Roberts?
Before we go any further, I'm wondering if we can document staff's language about in the evidence about the size of the disturbance and the minimal size and what with actual square footages based on what the applicant provided us today.
Yes, we can come up with some language on that.
That would be excellent. Thank you. Something else that was on my mind, but it has gone away at the moment, so I apologize for that. When was this lot established? When was it made?
Give me 1 second to pull that up. So it was recorded in volume 11 of the parcel maps, August 4th, 1977.
Okay, and just before we take action, I just want to reiterate that a lot that's created of this sort that doesn't allow development within our rules is kind of essentially undevelopable. I mean, we don't want to inflict that upon anyone, but with respect to how staff might think about it, I don't think that in a lot that has this kind of constraint, we are confined by the applicant's desire for the size. I think we actually can encourage not only the best use of the site, but the minimal use of the site that provides constructive economic development with respect to a livable single-family dwelling. And this is not the minimal size that you could live in, a single-family dwelling, since, you know, we know people live in smaller areas. We know that the issues like the competing issues like you're supposed to have a garage also add to the required amount of development that conflicts with our other concerns. I'm extremely concerned about developments on slope, not only for erosion, not only for engineering, which I think has gotten a lot better, but because of fire. And we know that homes that are built on steep slopes are particularly vulnerable to fire. We know that the risks of fire and the intensities of fire is increasing. So I'm just uncomfortable with the whole idea of, as we've done in the past, hanging stuff off the hill and calling it good. And so that's kind of a change in my general outlook, is to be much more concerned about those kinds of things than I used to be, and I guess all of us are, given the situations that we're having. I don't want to have any part in saying that was an okay thing to do and then have it burn down and hurt somebody, or fall down the hill and hurt somebody, like in Southern California. So I just want to go on the record as saying I am uncomfortable with some of the thinking that's gone into the evaluation of this project. As I've said before, it's not whether or not, it's much more nuanced than that. We really want to work with the applicant to understand our legitimate concerns about safety and following the rules. So what we're saying here is, yeah, this lot, according to all our rules, is really pretty much unbuildable, but we're going to let you build on it, and that means we're not going to apply any of these rules at all. And we're going to let you have an exception because you did the best you could on this unbuildable lot. And I'm just uncomfortable with that attitude. It's like we have to say sometimes that as we've talked about here, I'm sure to everybody's amount of everybody's ears falling off, we have to think about being fair to people. And we have in the past argued about slope infractions of as little as a couple hundred square feet in different areas. So this sort of wholesale, yeah, we can't do any better, so it's okay. I'm just really uncomfortable with that, and I don't really know where to go from that. And in particular, objection to the design. I'm sure the applicant has done what they would like to do as best they could in the spot they are, but kind of with the LUAC stated concern of, we have these rules, what do they mean? It's like it doesn't apply if you don't have an alternative, but you don't. So anyway, I'm trying to express complete puzzlement, and I know I'm being inarticulate about it, but yeah, I'm concerned. Commissioner Mendoza?
I'm also concerned. I agree with you. I think that there probably could have been, not trying to offend you or anything like that, but there could have been a better way to design it. Like if you look, you have a huge deck in the front of it. You have a family room and a living room. You have a two-car garage, and then a master bedroom to the right of that. I think that somehow you could lower the lower footprint of the house and possibly put some of it on top of the two-car garage where you don't disturb as much as the slope as possible. You also have a mud room that could possibly have been the bathroom and take the bedroom and put it upstairs. So you're literally impacting less of the slopes on the property. So I think that there's definitely a way to reduce the impact, but it would require some creativity and also design to achieve that. That's just kind of my opinion. You know, I as well do not feel comfortable with it.
Commissioners? Commissioner Gonzalez?
Thank you. And I just want to reiterate what some of the engineer staff and commissioners have mentioned. But just, again, as far as erosion, the water runoff, and the letter that was sent by Peter and Ann Albano, I believe all those issues were addressed by all. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. The other thing is that looking at the LUAC information from Jensen said the legal lot of record is prior to the 2010 general plan, et cetera. And I know that I mentioned that in the past in terms of what there is no feasible alternative, as commissioners have mentioned. And that's been a concern of mine also, like, well, is there really no feasible alternative? Or is there a smaller house that could be built that would be more feasible? So as a staff, if a 2,500 square foot home or 3,000 square foot home be built, would that be a more feasible alternative in your perspective or not?
A smaller home would reduce the impacts to slopes. However, it's not staff's practice to require or suggest that designs change. We just assess the design for consistency with the code. So yes, I do think a smaller home would reduce impacts to slopes. However, staff's practice isn't to suggest design changes unless there's inconsistencies with the code. I understand what's being said.
Right, and so that's been also, like, again, my concern that there is a more feasible alternative. So anyways, I'm just gonna leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, anybody? Action? What anybody want to do? I notice a deafening silence here. Commissioner Roberts?
I think my brain is confused by this one also because in other examples where we have reduced slope or development on slope, it's when people have had a flat lot to build on. And so then when they ask for an exception to build a deck or whatever else that could be reduced, you know, we've really encouraged them to do something different. This lot isn't that same lot. We've created somewhere along the line in 1977 a lot that's undevelopable. And so this is a very unique situation. And I also agree that it probably could be smaller. I mean, we've heard that, you know, there's a deck, there's a side patio, there's, you know, whatever else. So I'm conflicted. I don't know. I honestly don't know where we go with this.
I'm going to open the hearing, a public hearing again, ask the applicants or the applicant's representative if they'd be willing to come forward and have a little bit more of this conversation.
Yes, I'm happy to talk more about it.
Is there any openness, as far as you know, to looking at a smaller design for this lot?
I mean, of course, right? Like, definitely can look at adjusting and trying to compromise to get to the finish line. With the size of the lot being, I think it's like 6, almost 7 acres, the majority of it is in the scenic easement. Thank you. Yeah. So on the other side of the hill, where it's all scenic easement, there maybe is a better spot that would be easier to build on, but obviously that's not an option. My I guess response to the idea of moving the house over the garage, definitely an option. Then you're building on top of something, reducing the amount of square footage disturbed area. You're also affecting the aesthetic of the building and turning it into just this rectangle. There's no depth, there's no variation to the heights of things. So having it have a stepped appearance, I think, brings a more pleasant feel to the development. Obviously, just my opinion. As far as going from a 3,500 square foot house to a 2,700 square foot house, I mean, let's say we reduce the area by 1,000 feet. When you compare that to the size of the property, you're really not changing it a lot. When you say numbers like 12,000 and it brings about a large value, but when you take into account the size of the property, I feel like that value is a lot less than really the overall size of the property.
I guess my question was not so much asking you to design on the fly as to ask you whether with some time you might be willing and able to look at your, think this through, talk with staff, and see if you can come up with an alternative that better address some of the concerns you've heard here today. If more time wouldn't make a difference, that would change my thoughts about what would be appropriate for us to do. So just gauging the willingness of your team to look at design modifications that might help. And I heard you think some things through, but obviously wouldn't expect you to do that on the fly. Sure. Given some time, would it be possible for you to think about that a little further and potentially make some changes?
And I definitely could. It's not completely up to me, right? The client is gonna direct that process. I think there could be adjustments, and I'll have to find out if they're open to which direction they want to go.
Understood. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Mr. Spencer, I appreciate. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Spencer's just come forward to a microphone indicating to me that he wishes to say something. Mr. Spencer?
I'm just here in support and available for questions if you have them. Thank you.
Commissioner Shaw?
Thanks. I just wanted to say I don't have an issue with this design. I think it's a nice design. I like the effort made, like you said, the stepped appearance. But it is, like other commissioners have expressed, the fairness of this. We've taken applicants over, I think it was like 70 square feet was one of them, on less of a grade, less square footage. We've been kicked it back to them to try and maybe come back with a way to avoid that section. So I would have trouble granting this. Also, I think because it's a square peg round hole, like you're not forced to develop this lot. You're not forced to purchase this lot. Like do your due diligence and make sure you're purchasing a lot that can accommodate the house that you hope to have on there. So I don't know what to do with this project, but I definitely also have the same concerns about fairness. We're going to let them build on 50% grade, a lot of square footage, when we've really nitpicked it feels like nitpicking in hindsight when we're looking at this for 70 square feet. So I don't know what to do.
I was going to suggest to the commission that we might consider a continuance for the applicant and staff to work together to see if they could address some of this. Commissioner Monsalve? Thank
you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering, what are the sizes of the neighboring properties? Because I would like to make sure that whatever goes here is visually comparable, and I understand the development on the slopes, and I agree with everything that you've all stated, but I also don't think that something much smaller than anything else on that slope would be appropriate either. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we did hear in comment that this lot was unique in its configuration, though, so there is that other half of the situation. Commissioner Roberts?
I'll just say, from my own experience, anecdotally, it would be comparable. There's some older homes out there that have been there for decades that are smaller, and there's some newer homes out there that are much, much larger. So it's kind of a mix of everything.
Commissioners? Certain lack of enthusiasm here.
I have the same concerns. I have the same concerns that you have with respects to the slopes, but I also understand that this lot was built for development back in the 1970s, before we had our planning guide for that area. So, I'm prepared to make a motion, but this might be something we look at more in terms of policy, right? And whether or not we should continue to do that in the future in terms of a guide, in terms of the issues you raised, Chair, respecting building on slopes that are beyond what our policy says now, that we might consider. But with the 4 conditions that we've discussed, I think among them is to have a different color palette that's more consistent with earth tones. A construction management plan that deals with the issue you raised over the amount of grade that's going to take place in terms of getting moved out of the area. And then down lighting coding for that area. In addition to, there's one other issue I think that's brought up, which is, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think there's 4 items. I know I mentioned 3, I can't remember the 4th one. I'm prepared to make a motion to do that.
Is there a second? Commissioner Getzelman, are you seconding?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Discussion. Commissioner Hartzell?
I am a little concerned that I don't know how to ask this question, but I've heard erosion issues and mudslides come up, and as well as fire and concern about the slope and the potential danger for fire and how plants might interact with that. Is there a way to talk about the landscape plan or talk about the plan for water runoff so that we can address the mudslide issue, or point me to something that shows me that that's already been dealt with?
Staff, do you want to address that?
Yes, so water runoff, a stormwater pollution prevention plan and drainage and erosion plans were provided, and they are included in the plan set.
And if I may add, Commissioner, there is the prepared arborist report does include fuel management recommendations, and these would be required to be implemented by the property owner on an ongoing basis. And this kind of goes back to your question, Commissioner Deal, about fuel management within 30 feet and 100 feet of the property. There wouldn't be no requirement to necessarily remove trees, but there is the recommendation to prune trees, especially on the lower levels of trees, as well as clearing brush and dead grass. So there is state requirements that are then implemented through this permit that would require ongoing fuel management. And prior to issuance of the construction permit, finalized erosion control, stormwater pollution prevention plans, and grading plans would be reviewed and need to be approved by engineering services and building services.
Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
Yes, I just want to confirm that the erosion plan and the fuel management plan talk to each other, or somebody has thought about how they might interact.
Yes, the erosion control plan does require that all disturbed soils are revegetated, essentially prior to final inspection of the residence.
And the fire clearance requires that they aren't?
Fire clearance would require that there is still vegetation and duff on the ground, but you're not scraping at the top of the soils. You're just removing brush and dead piles of leaves or branches.
Thank you.
Now I remember the fourth item. It's the fire issue.
Commissioner Gomez is remembering another item.
The fire issue you raised, make sure that it's compliant with regulations that ensure that it is consistent with the current fire code, and it's it's designed in a way that it's least likely to be in a fire. Actually, not least likely to minimize the fire risk in that area.
Thank you. And that is part of your motion, I take it. Yes. Is that okay with the second? I'm seeing a nod. I really support the previous comment that my concern is about whether we're not in silos, that we're looking at this visually sensitive area as represented by the many visual overlays that limit development on the property with respect to the necessary fire clearance, with respect to the drainage. It's important to me that all of these considerations of both aesthetics and function be all taken together. And we've had cases in the past where we have had simulations of a view, for example, of the completed structure that didn't reflect the necessary fire clearance, so that our decisions were influenced by a picture that we weren't going to get. And so I guess I just run a little gun shy on that. Mr. Spencer, are you leaning forward to say something, or are you just thinking?
I was thinking, but I'm happy to clarify some of the interaction with the reports, the stability of the slope with our geologic and geotechnical reports that we've asked engineers to identify and ensure that they are stable. The drainage plans that help prevent those slopes from getting saturated, which makes them less stable. And the requirement to have vegetate them, which helps stabilize slopes as well. But also I'm hearing that it needs to be coordinated with fuel management, which is about controlling the vegetation, having live, healthy vegetation, green vegetation within a certain distance of the house, limbing trees up from the ground at least 10 feet. There is a new executive order that requires a zero clearance within 5 feet of the home. Essentially, don't have tree limbs, vegetation within 5 feet of the home. And then beyond that, it's creating pockets of vegetation, clearing dead vegetation, and still limbing trees up from the 30 feet to the 100 feet or up to the property line or beyond if determined by the fire department. So I just wanted to put that in there. As I think many of us know, but it was a question that was raised.
Thank you. And I would just add that we're talking 50% slopes up that hill. So it's not quite the same as many people might experience. I'm going to make a comment here. I can't support the motion. If this lot were going to be easy to develop, it would have been done in the 70s and 80s when the lot was made. It's sat here since then because it is not. And there were a lot fewer regulations then. I guarantee you that we didn't have the kind of stringent requirements that we used to, and we used to hang things off the hill just willy-nilly as we saw fit. The situation here, as I see it, is someone has taken a remainder lot that was existed and troubled since the time it was created and is now trying to do something to match the neighbors, which it was never going to do before. So I'm unable to support the motion, although I understand and appreciate the thinking that's gone into it. Commissioner Work?
Yeah, my question is, when did the scenic easement come into play?
When it was recorded in 1977.
Commissioner Gomez?
I'm hearing kind of two messages. One of them is that probably possible for some folks to support it here. The other is that we need to come back with with the actual plans and visuals of what this might look like based on this direction that we're providing. If the secretary is willing to do it, I'm willing to delay it and bring this item back to have more conversation on it. I'm okay with that, with the idea that we will take it up at a date certain down the road.
Commissioner Getzelman, what are your thoughts? In general,
Yeah, can you be a little more specific, or do you want me to just go on for a while?
The rest of us just go on. You shouldn't.
No, well, probably my thoughts are confusion, but I think probably the best course of action would be the continuation that the chair hinted at earlier, to give these nice people an opportunity at least to work with the engineer and to perhaps design something. I certainly understand the issues involved with this lot, and I think bottom line, that Commissioner Deal is probably correct. It probably never should have been. But on the other hand, I'm not in favor of stripping away the rights of the person who bought the lot. So perhaps and hopefully there is a compromise in there somewhere. So I'd be in favor of continuation if, in fact, that's the way the maker of the motion was headed.
I'm okay with it. So date certain.
So I'm understanding that the motion has been modified by the maker and the second to be a motion of continuance of this item to a date certain to address the matters hereby discussed in the meeting. Is there any further discussion of that? Staff, do you have any idea what a date certain appropriate to that might be?
1 second, we're just looking at the schedule. Yeah, it appears the next available date is April 9th.
So we're looking at a staff suggested date of April 9th. Mr. Gomez, Mr. Getzelman, yes? All right, so that is, everybody clear on the motion? Commissioner Gonzalez?
Would that give the engineer enough time to come up with a different plan, or the architect, or?
I don't know that we're telling them they have to come up with a different plan. We're telling them to the staff to come forward with some additional information and to work with the applicant to see if there are alterations they might propose. But I'm hesitant to tell them to redesign their project unless they wish to do so. I think they heard the concerns that we expressed. Would that meet your?
That's fine, but I just have had those concerns in the past and now, in terms of if there is no feasible alternative, and I just believe that there is a feasible alternative, and that's a decision that the commission would have to make. Anyways, thank you.
Yeah, I understand. And again, I say the same thing and trying to be consistent about it. The proposed design has to be designed to the lot and to the rules as best possible, and not the design has to be shoehorned into the lot or the rules based on what the applicant has decided they would like to have. It's really a huge requirement for our architects and engineers to try to balance the desires with the rules and the reality. And I'm glad we have good ones of those. Is there further discussion? If not, let's go ahead and take the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Any abstentions? That being the case, the motion carries and the item's continued to a date certain of April 5th, did you say?
9th.
9th, I'm sorry. Okay, very well. Thank you, Mr. Alameda. And that brings us to the Planning Commission referrals. The first item is the referral spreadsheet. Ms. Jensen, did you receive any insights to that you'd like to pass along?
Thank you, Commissioner Deal. No updates at this time. We are tracking the requested referrals. And again, we have no updates at this time, but we do have a staff presentation on one of the referral items up next.
Yes, item number 3. So is there anybody want to talk about the Planning Commission referral matrix? Anybody in the chambers? Anybody online? Madam Clerk.
There are no hands up on Zoom and no new emails.
Okay, no public comment on that one. Let's move to item number 3, which is a referral on number 24.8, now that we have numbers for them. Thank you all very much. On the regulations and enforcement efforts to curb unpermitted food vendors. Ms. Jensen, are you? No, okay. Who's dealing with this? I'll turn it over to whoever in the staff would like to talk.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Armando Gonzalez, supervising. Can you share staff left? I'm sorry. I'm sorry again, request staff right. Good morning, my name is Armando Gonzalez, supervising environmental health specialist for consumer protection team under environmental health department. I will be providing an update on the current response to complaints related to unpermitted food vendors in unincorporated Monterey County. Here with me is Katie Scariet, Assistant Planner for Housing Community Development, who will be providing an update on mobile food facilities that as they relate to land use and zoning regulations. In addition to providing an update, I will be requesting enforcement resources from Monterey County Sheriff's Office, local law enforcement agencies, and the District Attorney's Office. For a little background, unpermitted food vendors are operators who are selling, peddling food on a cart, truck, trailers, tables, or under a tent without a valid health permit with the Department of Environmental Health. This presentation will focus on unpermitted pop-up taco vendors in unincorporated Monterey County. There are some exceptions to street vendors vending under Senate Bill 972. Vendors selling only prepackaged non-potentially hazardous foods and whole uncut produce with a display area of less than 25 square feet are typically exempt from needing a health permit with our department. For example, a man selling uncut whole oranges in a parking lot would not require a Monterey County health permit. This exemption does not apply to local city or code related to zoning right-of-way or other requirements outside of the health department. We believe that the influx of pop-up taco vendors has to do with the Senate Bill 972, which took effect January 1st, 2023, and decriminalized sidewalk food vending. However, Senate Bill 972 in California does not apply to food preparation, example, the pop-up taco vendors. It specifically only applies to limited food preparation, which would be our compact mobile food permit that I will mention in later slides. Our goal at the Health Department is to protect and serve consumers of Monterey County by ensuring food safety, preventing food misbranding, and reducing the risk of foodborne illnesses through education and issuing of permits. With the current unpermitted food vendors, we seek to help them obtain a valid health permit, ensuring they have the necessary food knowledge, or require them to cease operations through increased enforcement. Since the beginning of the fiscal year, 24-25, Environmental Health has received 66 complaints related to these unpermitted food vendors. Environmental health inspectors have been responding to these complaints on a weekly basis with little success. Our current response to these vendors, it is a team of 2 inspectors being assigned. They do request law enforcement presence prior to arrival by calling the dispatch number. Once we do make contact with the vendors, we do provide food safety education, inform them of the unpermitted practices, conduct an inspection, and provide best practices. We do document findings and take pictures of unsafe practices. We request the operator to provide identification in order to issue a citation. This usually does require law enforcement presence as these vendors are uncooperative. We do have them cease food operations and pack up and vacate the area. I've attached some pictures of one of our complaints response located at 499 Salinas Road in Royal Oaks. You can see several health and safety violations. For example, food from unapproved source, lack of refrigeration, fire hazards of unsafe storage of propane tanks next to open flames, no hand washing, handling of cash, money with bare hands and continuing to prepare food afterwards. Also, vendors adding raw meat on top of leftover cooked meat, as you can see in the Al Pastor rotisserie there, has been reported by other neighboring environmental health agencies. Although this has not been confirmed in our county. Here we see a similar setup. We do know that these are very well-organized groups with reports of them coming from Fresno County and Merced County. All of these pop-up taco vendors have identical equipment and food preparation. We are unable to identify if they are the same organization or same vendors, as we do have lack of cooperation of providing identification. In communications with District Attorney's Office, it was determined that the vehicles being used at these different locations are owned by the same individual. Some of the health risks, illnesses associated with these vendors are unapproved food source, lack of refrigeration, no hand washing, no restrooms, unclean surfaces, little to no food safety knowledge, and poor personal hygiene by the vendors. These are the California Retail Food Code requirements for preparation and selling of food to the public, as mentioned in the previous slide. A note to mention is that unapproved food source and prevention of unadulterated food would still be an issue once a health permit is acquired due to factors like these vendors coming from out of county with little to food safety knowledge. Some of the limitations our inspectors have include safety concern is the number one. Without law enforcement presence, our inspectors have been victims of intimidation by these food operators and the public in previous response. The most recent case, Thursday, January 23rd, where 2 inspectors were harassed by members of the public when responding to these vendors in the corner of Castroville Boulevard and Highway 156. 911 had to be called to control the situation. Other limitations are the environmental health inspectors are not peace officers. They do not carry radios or weapons. They have no authority to require vendors to provide identification in order to issue a citation. We're unable to confiscate food or equipment due to safety. There's limitations of staff working outside of normal working hours. We're unable to enforce Monterey County code violations associated with these pop-up taco vendors like traffic, public nuisance, noise, right-of-way, and signage. These code violations would fall under law enforcement or county code enforcement. Currently, under California Retail Food Code, there is no health permit available to these street vendors, to these street pop-up taco vendors due to lack of essential facilities such as restrooms, hand washing stations, and other food safety requirements. We do have available permits that are provided during the food safety education portion of the response. Some of them are a mobile food facility permit, a compact mobile food operation, a farmer's market, a special event, a micro home enterprise operation, a cottage food permit. There was a slide that's missing, but that's okay. That's okay. There was a slide that showed the amounts our permits cost, but I can answer that after the presentation if need be. Foodborne illnesses. I do want to note that Environmental Health Department has not received reports of foodborne illnesses related to these taco vendors. Reports from foodborne illnesses have been reported in other counties, such as Mariposa County, Arizona, where 17 people became sick with diarrhea and vomiting. I also want to mention that our department did receive a mushroom poisoning complaint on New Year's Eve. 3 individuals were hospitalized after suffering from acute hepatotoxicity due to severe mushroom poisoning after cooking with mushrooms they had purchased from a truck vendor at a supermarket in East Salinas. Supermarket parking lot, sorry. These victims suffered from GI symptoms such as nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. Acute hepatotoxicity can cause liver failure, need of a liver transplant, and worst case scenario, death. The CDC does estimate that each year 1 in 6 Americans get sick, 128,000 are hospitalized, and 3,000 die from foodborne illnesses. Community equity and empowerment. Environmental Health Department is committed to ensuring community equity and empowerment by providing food safety education and assisting with obtaining necessary permits to reduce the risk of foodborne illnesses. Reconciling equity and empowerment while addressing the issue of illegal vendors is a delicate balance act. It requires a strategy that upholds the law while understanding and addressing the root cause that drive the individuals to engage in these illegal behaviors. Vending. I'm now going to pass over to Katie, who will be discussing mobile food facilities.
Sorry, we're trying to update the slides, so please give me one moment.
Absolutely.
IT staff, can you share HDMI? Thank you. Hello, Chair Deal and Planning Commissioners. Katie Scary, Assistant Planner for Housing Community Development. Monterey County Code, or MCC, does not allow for vendors to sell from parked vehicles or structures on public roads or within the public right-of-way. Vendors may receive a violation or an infraction if they are found doing so. The County of Monterey's Housing Community Development Department processes permits pursuant to and enforces the county's land use and zoning regulations. Monterey County Code, or MCC, is silent to mobile food facilities, yet Monterey County Code does include regulations associated with restaurants and eating and drinking establishments. If a mobile food facility, also known as an MFF, is considered a restaurant or an eating and drinking establishment, then a mobile food facility would be subject to the county's zoning regulations. HCD is currently drafting a mobile food facility interpretation to identify when a mobile food facility is considered a restaurant or an eating and drinking establishment, and therefore would be subject to county zoning regulations and land use permitting. There are a number of related regulations that may apply to mobile food vendors. Signage and outdoor displays are subject to Monterey County Code, which regulates signs mounted or displayed within both coastal and non-coastal areas of unincorporated Monterey County. Additionally, MCC prohibits signs to be displayed within the public right-of-way, exterior of buildings, grounds, or public property. If a mobile food facility results in gatherings of large assemblages of people, it may require a separate use permit or coastal development permit. In addition, mobile food facilities are subject to the county's noise regulations, which requires that the operation of machinery shall not exceed 70 decibels, and it is prohibited to make unreasonable sound any day of the week from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. the following morning. Mobile food facilities are subject to Monterey County Code, which regulates non-food debris, public nuisance, and traffic and parking. Consulting further with Public Works, Facilities and Parks, and other related departments for input may be beneficial, as HCD identifies that this issue surrounding mobile food facilities is larger than just 2 departments. Armando will now be reviewing the potential for collaboration.
Thank you. We hope to obtain additional resources from law enforcement to have these vendors meet code compliance or cease operations. A collaboration will allow enforcement of requesting operator identification in order to issue administrative citations, run license plates, confiscate food and equipment, potentially vehicle impoundment, prosecution of misdemeanor charges for non-compliance under Health and Safety Code 114395. The District Attorney's Office has agreed to pursue misdemeanor charges to these unpermitted vendors if need be. And lastly, enforce Monterey County codes related to these vendors, like public nuisance, noise, signage, traffic, and right-of-way. Selling of food without permits is just the top layer that requires enforcement with these vendors. I do have a case study for reference. City of Salinas has developed a task force of 6 retired police officers dedicated to enforcing unpermitted food vendors after hours. This task force operates on 2 teams who proactively patrol the city as well as respond to complaints. The current unpermitted food vendors that we see in unincorporated Monterey County started in the city of Salinas and has since left and are now operating in unincorporated Monterey County. And this concludes our presentations, and we are open to questions.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say it's a very informative and helpful presentation, and perhaps ask the first question, which is, how can we help?
Thank you, Commissioner. We're, based on the referral, we're giving an update, and we have had several, since then, we have had several meetings with the Sheriff's Office, but we believe it may have been a low priority assignment, so we're hoping to maybe get a referral sent out for them to, for joint collaboration with our department.
So that would be something along the lines of a note to the Board of Supervisors to consider the complaints we've heard, something like that might be helpful?
Maybe, yes.
Okay, is it your referral, Commissioner Mendoza?
Yes, it was. And thank you for the presentation. That was an excellent presentation, and I agree with you. There has to be more collaboration between the Health Department and the Sheriff's Department, and we need to get the Sheriff Department involved, where you're sending out your inspectors out there for unpermitted food facilities, where you do have that resource of a sheriff present, so you're not in danger. So I completely agree with you. And furthermore, I know the hours of operation that you're currently working, most of the time you're off at 4 o'clock or what have you, or 5. And most of the activities, it almost seems like they're very well aware of that. As soon as you go, they go. And the other day, I kid you not, North Monterey County, there was 11 out there selling illegal vendors, and also some of the catering trucks that do not have, adequate restrooms or what have you. Here we are. They don't have adequate restrooms, so consequently, where are they going to the bathroom? They're out there for 10 hours, no bathroom. It's the simplest thing. If I'm working for environmental health and I'm driving by there's a catering truck, there's no bathroom, there's 30 people there eating, we have a problem. It's not brain science. So that's one of them. Furthermore, now they're starting to sell chopped up fruit, and then they have a little barbecue pit going with roasted corn out there. I just hope it doesn't continue during fire season or we're going to end up burning down the town. But we definitely need more cooperation, and we need to get the supervisors to give you more resource in the view of more money to hire more people, and also start working on the possibility of not just being or having inspectors available for that till 4 o'clock, unless there's an emergency they call in, then you send somebody out. But it should be where you have a shift that possibly starts at 12 o'clock, 12 to 8 or a 2 to 10 or what have you, where you can hit those hot spots during the time when it's happening. And I think that that would be really, really beneficial. Same thing, if you have a catering truck out there that it's a mobile food business that is permitted, but yet they're there, and you go out there, you catch, well, you can't be here because you don't have the adequate bathrooms or what have you. They do not listen to you, or they don't follow, or they could care less whether you issue them a citation or not. At that point, maybe you have to revoke their permit. And then at that point, okay, what are we doing? Or when they're coming in and getting their permit, you issue a permit to a mobile food business. Where are you taking your mobile food business? Are you taking it to an approved place where it can be there because you've already did the research that it has the bathroom, has everything needed to operate, within the law? Then at that point, we give him a permit. We just don't give him a permit and say, okay, here you go on your happy way. Go sell food wherever you want to sell. And a lot of them think that just because you issue them a permit, it gives them the right to go operate pretty much wherever they want. And that should not be the case. It's like, where are you taking this mobile food business? You're taking it to a facility that's approved and it's been identified by the county. These are the places where you could actually sell food for, say, it's a piece of property that meets all the qualifications to have a mobile food business outside. Okay, that's where it's going. You get the signature from the guy that's going to rent it to them, and then you follow up with it, maybe in a month, maybe in 2 months. So I think that's part of the thing that we need to do to address that accordingly. And once again, also asking for more resource to help out your department. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Shaw?
Thank you. So I would like to see more than just a note go to the Board of Supervisors. I would love for them to see the same presentation that we saw. I didn't fully understand the extent of what staff is facing when they go out there, and I'm really irritated, I guess, to put it lightly, that they're giving you guys problems and harassing you, and that 911 had to be called. Like that really makes me angry. So that's where I think the real change would begin, is with the supervisors really realizing the extent of the danger, not just to the community who's maybe purchasing, assuming that these things are prepared safely, but to staff who has to deal with this. So I don't know how that can happen or if that could happen, but I would love for them to see this exact presentation. Two, I didn't know this existed, and I don't really know much about it, but I saw a sheriff code enforcement officer. I didn't even know they had anything like that out at the gas station on the levee not too long ago. And so I don't know if that's somebody, what their exact role is when they get involved, and if that potentially that resource, instead of just a sheriff, because I know we're very short-staffed in North County specifically, if they can be roped into this project. Thank you.
Thank you. I would say sheriffs are in short supply many places else as well. Anybody else? Commissioner Gomez?
Your presentation talked about it a little bit, but I wanted to know if we could get some more details about the difference between vendors on public streets as opposed to private property and how you'd handle that.
If we do receive a complaint of such nature, we would respond and request a health permit based on our codes, but we do have limited enforcement power if it's in a private area versus a public.
Right away or whatever. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I was just going to weigh in here and say that as it's the Planning Commission, really all that is within our jurisdiction is the land use aspects of this. And we're really grateful to be informed. But we do have the opportunity to recommend that something be presented to the Board of Supervisors for further consideration. And I'm wondering, maybe as I was looking at Mr. Spencer to say, what would be the appropriate way to forward this presentation and information and concern to the board so that they might consider the parts that are not related to land use? I mean, we've heard some really good suggestions here today, but none of them are things we do at the Planning Commission. Well, hardly any. Mr. Spencer, do you have any thoughts about how we could do that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We can ask to have some time reserved on an advance agenda to provide a presentation to the board as part of a workshop. Typically, it would come from either a referral from the board or something in writing from the Planning Commission. We could put together a memo to send to the board through the clerk of the board from the Planning Commission recommending something like that, if that would be helpful.
I would advocate for such a thing in memos generally saying that we had received some concerns and held some concerns. We'd asked for information. We think the information is very important, and we'd like to forward it to the Board of Supervisors for their consideration and hopefully action. I mean, something along to understand we're not telling them that it's not our, we know it's not our jurisdiction, but we learned this through the process, and we think we've got something that they should look at. I don't think that's unprecedented, actually, trying to think about it. I think we've done it in some other cases as well. Commissioner Shaw, did you have something further you wanted to say? Commissioner Gomez?
I just wanted to ask that the presentation be shared with us.
You mean sent
Slide
to us?
presentations, yeah, that's it.
Is that possible? That'd be great.
Sure it is, yes.
Anything else? I'd like to thank our interdisciplinary team very much and really appreciate your information and hope that just doing that would be helpful. If we have any, I guess I should have skipped over a public comment and I didn't mean to. Is there anybody here in the chambers that wants to speak on this? There's hardly anybody here. I think that's what fooled me. No one's coming down. And are there any hands on Zoom or whatever, Madam Clerk?
There are no hands up on Zoom and no additional emails.
Okay, so public comment is hereby concluded and bring it back to the commission. And as I said, say thank you to our team. And unless there's an objection, do we need to vote on sending such a thing? I don't think it would hurt.
No, I think you should.
Okay. So if somebody cared to make a motion of some sort about this, I'd appreciate it. Commissioner Mendoza, it's your referral. Do you want to just make a motion that, as I suggested, or as you might suggest, we send a memo to the board and request that they consider this?
Yes, I'd like to make the motion, what Chair Deal said.
I make motions all the time, what council said. Commissioner Gonzalez?
Can we make a motion if it's not agendized?
It is agendized.
I thought it was just for information.
I think the council, is there any problem?
No, I agree. You can make this motion and ask for this referral to be sent to the board for their consideration.
Okay, thank you.
See, she said it must be all right. Is there a second to the motion? Commissioner Getzelman seconds that motion. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no?
Aye.
That was an aye, not a no, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just late.
So we'll try again. Any opposed, no? And any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion carries unanimously, and we'll ask HCD to work together to provide that information to the board as discussed. Thank you very much. And it sounds to me like it's kind of pressing. I think as the weather gets better, it will become more so. Great. All right. That's that item. We have a department report next. Is there a department report, Ms. Jensen?
I am not aware of department updates, but I see Mr. Spencer coming to the dais.
Anybody knows, he'd know. Mr. Spencer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yesterday at the board, we provided a status update on HCD. I looked back at 2024. I acknowledged all the hard work that our staff at HCD does. It's an incredible amount of work. Over 3,500 building permit applications, over 200 planning permit applications to a hearing. We closed over 700 code cases. We responded to more than 7,000 visits to our front counter. Just an unbelievable amount of work. We do have some opportunities to reduce some vacancies at the moment. So we have some open positions that are exemptions from the freeze that we're actively recruiting for. We also had approved at the board a reallocation of 2 positions. Right now within our organizational chart, we have 2 planning managers or principal planners, one over the long-range planning team and one over the current planning team. As you know, our current planning manager, Anna Kinga, has left. That's one of the recruitments that is going on right now. But the reallocation will create a 3rd planning manager, and that is intended to be in the current planning team. And that's a reallocation from a management analyst vacant position within HCD. The other reallocation was to reallocate a vacant civil engineer position within our building services division to a building plans examiner. And that will create a 5th building plans examiner to reduce wait times for plan check on building plans. So a lot has happened, but I think that's the update I have for today. And we do have a update scheduled on the housing element next week at the board as well. So we're actively trying to wrap that up and prepare for that. 25th, yes, that's not next week. Thank you, Kelly.
Next meeting. Almost.
Yes.
Very well. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Spencer? Seeing none, we say thank you. Is there anybody who wants to comment on it from the public? I see nobody in the chambers except Ms. Garriott, and I don't know if she does or not. No, she says no. Anybody online, Madam Clerk?
No.
Very well. All right, that being the case, I'm going to go ahead and conclude that item. And unless there's further business before us, I'm going to conclude the meeting and bring us to an adjournment at 10:53 a.m. today. And thank everybody very much for their participation. It's great to have a full house.